Hello, good evening, everyone. I am Mansi, a PhD student in the Department of Mechanical Engineering at IIT Delhi. Welcome to the Public Systems Planning and Optimization Symposium. In today's webinar, we have Professor Amit Agarwal from the Indian Institute of Technology Roorkee presenting on the paper titled A Paradigm Shift in Urban Mobility, Policy Insights from Travel Before and After COVID-19 to Seize the Opportunity. Dr. Amit Agarwal is an assistant professor at the Department of Civil Engineering, IIT Roorkee. He is also a joint faculty at the Mehta Family School of Data Science and Artificial Intelligence at IIT Roorkee and a visiting faculty at the National Rail and Transportation Institute, Vadodara. He has achieved his PhD in Traffic and Transportation Engineering from TU Berlin, Germany, and MTech in Transportation Engineering from IIT Delhi. He is working on multiple research and consultancy projects funded by the IAHE under the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways and the Science and Engineering Research Board. He has also worked at Robert Bosch, Singapore as a senior research scientist. His research interests include intelligent transport systems, traffic modeling and simulation, agent-based simulation, transport negative externalities, and travel demand modeling. Over to you, Professor Agarwal.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, unfortunately, our internet connection just interrupted, so I'm trying to use a lower bandwidth internet connection, but please interrupt me if my connection breaks in between.
Sure,
Let me share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, I hope it's in the full screen mode, not in the presenter mode.
Yes, full
Okay,
screen.
thank you. May I start now?
Yes, sir.
So I think I have roughly about 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, good evening, everyone. This is one of the paper which we started working on when the pandemic struck, and it was many things were uncertain, new to us. I mean, to the scientists, to the researchers, to the travelers, to the public. So immediately after we thought of let's try to understand the behavior, and then let us also try to do some simulation experiments so that we can try to explore. So this paper is written by one of my PhD student, Anurag. He's also here, and myself. Um, so basically, this paper is published in Transport Policy in 2020, but volume was assigned later on. And we finished this paper, I think, in early July or so. And that's why our period of the surveying was also for about 2 months, which I would come later on. Yeah, so this is just the timeline of this particular COVID pandemic. Now, like for instance, it's not just like the beginning was with the name as COVID, but it's more like viral pneumonia, which was reported towards end of December by WHO, which is then confirmed that it's novel coronavirus. Then basically, where this is the location where first it was detected, and then the Thailand also confirmed that basically means some persons might have traveled. So that's basically which has happened, and then within 2 weeks, this was kind of spreading across multiple countries, across continents. Yeah, within about 10 days, this was declared as global health emergency, and then this was named as SARS-CoV-2. This is basically severe acute respiratory syndrome. CoV-2 is the reason being, in 2003 or so, there was SARS-CoV-1, which was also detected in China, and fortunately, it was just limited to the only two countries, China, Hong Kong, and I think very few cases in Japan. And at that time, too, it was about 8,000 cases which were detected, and about 10% of the people could not make it. But it was not as disastrous as is in the current situation, and then it was declared as pandemic. Naturally, in India, the cases started somewhere towards end of January, which were spiked later on. Now, the point here is basically this period, like how this has transmitted from a location to another. And this is basically my slides. Just give me a moment, please. I think, yeah. So it's basically the transportation which makes the epidemic into a pandemic. There are various examples which we can look on in the literature. For instance, Spanish flu and SARS outbreak in 2003, swine flu, and many such diseases. And this was also confirmed by a recent study that the air travel and high-speed trains. Okay, it's kind of storing my all the keys, and somehow it's slow. I hope I'm audible. It's not disturbed by some other activity.
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Okay. I may have to use maybe the PDF. It's just give me a moment, please. Am I audible? Mansi,
Yes, sir, you're audible.
I think it's just my system is changing the different internet connection that hanged. So just give me another minute, please. I'm sorry for the inconvenience. I hope my screen is also visible.
Yes, sir, your screen is visible now.
Okay, yeah. So
But I think your camera is off.
see. Should be on now, right?
Yes, the camera is on, and yeah,
Yeah.
the slides are also visible.
Yeah, I'm sorry guys for the inconvenience. It's this lead to this. So basically, what happened is we all know, we have all lived through that, and it's like the different reactions which we observed. Primarily, it's due to the uncertain conditions. We were not having any details of the, let's say, the coronavirus itself, that how it's spreading. Is it just by breathing in, or is it also because of the fomites? And then so different countries, they have tried to impose the lockdown. Again, reason being is it was primarily triggering by the travel. So like we can see in the different timeline how this has been triggered. Now, what happened as a consequence of that? Like primarily, you know that everything was kind of come to standstill, including the public transport system. The daily wages, they were moving to their hometowns, countries, and then we have seen these kind of mass migrations, and of course, millions of students, children, they were just sitting at home and not able to do much over there. And then probably that was also the era when this whole online lecture system has kind of, and it was there, but this was probably the more of the motivational part or the enforcement part, and then the existing policies which were trying to focus on the various part of the urban infrastructure, which were also kind of paralyzed. Yeah, so this is the mobility trends in India, and then what you can observe, this is, well, we all know it, but this is only for 2020, July 2020. I just kept this to highlight, assuming that there will be some students here, and like you can also have these kind of plots to analysis using the Google community data, which is available for free for all countries, disaggregated in different bins. Basically, here what you see is the different type of activity patterns, and then that is based on the location services. Typically, by default, it's off, but if we are using the Google products, it asks us to turn on the location service. That means we are continuously being tracked. So across the different lockdowns and then unlock, that's how the trends look like. An interesting part was here about this the retail and recreational, as well as the grocery and pharmacy. You see this the yellow line, which is kind of peaked on before this lockdown one began. Like there was some information about it, or some clue that this might have happened. So you could have seen that, you could can see that there was some sort of panic buying over here, and this was continued slowly across the several weeks. And this is also what we also observed in our survey later on. This is a similar diagrams, but primarily only for the modes to drive and walk. And this is from Apple mobility data, again for the same period. And then again here, what we see is primarily during the lockdown, primary trips were by walk. And then this is basically also means like they were trying to go to the, let's say, grocery or pharmacy, or are there to fulfill their local needs in the near vicinity, because they won't be able to walk longer. Yeah, this is the result from one of the concurrent studies going on at that time. Of course, when we were writing it, no such studies were available. But important part here is the decrease in the metro share, increase in the car or taxi shares, as well as over here. Now, this is an interesting diagram in one of the McKinsey's report. And then what we see here is for the primary trips, let's say business and commuting trips, where everyone was trying to look on the time and inconvenience for the business rather than risk of infection or the price. This has completely changed. Now, people have started thinking of the chances of getting the infection. That was the at least the many studies which have been done now at that period of time. That's what they have reported. And it's not just only for the business, but for other trips also. This has become the priority. So based on these kind of fundamentals, we predicted that there would be some major changes during the COVID period as well as post-COVID period compared to the pre-COVID period. Now, naturally, this post-COVID is difficult to define. But again, while writing the paper, this was also, we were assuming that let's say when at least 80% of the trips would be back. So what we did is we tried to use the questionnaire survey, which was floated from 20th March to end. And we used all possible means, online means, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, WhatsApp, emails. And secondly is the simulation-based experiment. We'll talk later on. And here, like we have also segregated the whole data in the two cities, like Tier A, Tier B. The Tier A is mostly the mega cities, and Tier B is 42 cities which have population of million plus, and then about 50 plus cities with less than 1 million population. So this is just like the different components of the survey: pre-COVID, during COVID, and post-COVID. That's post-COVID is more like stated what they may do once the situation is over. And then the period was mostly the lockdown, naturally due towards end of the survey period when the unlock started. I will come to this picture maybe later on, but the idea was here to explore the sustainable and resilient public transport system where people feel more safer in terms of getting the infection, and then trying to prepare ourselves for any such future pandemic or emergency situations. Some findings. Yeah, like as we can expect, due to the online medium, we were able to capture mostly the younger people and of the both male and female. And also very interestingly, we were able to capture income level, different income levels, and then also like high income levels, which are having more than 0.1 million per month. And in terms of the occupation, it's primarily the private jobs which we were able to capture, and then government job and then students were also the significant one. We also tried to keep the freelancer part over here just to understand that how many persons were already doing the work from home. Yeah, so that's just some results. I will maybe just go through with some of the important part, not all of them, and naturally the paper is available. You may refer to that. So important part here is just to, because we have classified it to mega cities, Tier A, Tier B. There's the boundary, the geographical boundaries of the cities. Here we see the 37% of the walk trips that were less than 5 kilometers. 40% of the primary activity facilities are within 30 minutes. That's and these numbers are significantly higher than in the other cities. And again, like walk is preferred, which you can see here for these two bins, less than 5 minute and 5 to 15 minute bins. Yeah, yes, like as expected, lower income households, they were trying to use PT and walk. For middle and high income, it was MTW, IPT, and car PT respectively. This is like we divided our data also into the primary and our survey into the primary activities as well as secondary activities, because primary were mostly like you cannot do anything. You were supposed to stay at least during the lockdown period, and in the secondaries is more like leisure shopping, which were allowed time to time at in different locations. There were different days on which you may go to the market and get things. So we tried to split it also into the two activity categories. And then this is an important part here is about more than two-thirds of the people, they just visit go for secondary trips only once 3 times a week or every other day, and about half of the people the trips are less than 3 kilometers. Surprisingly, some of them are still using car mode. It could also be due to, let's say, they are going for the socializing and then maybe also bulk grocery shoppings. Yes, so this is all for tier B. It's as you see, compared to 37 and 40%, we have the numbers here, 43 and 60%. So this clearly gives like what is the size of the cities. And another interesting part, in tier B cities, we were able to see significant bicycle trips together with walk trips, which was not the case in tier A. Tier A, it was mostly walk for less than 15 minutes. So it's more like maybe the absence of the infrastructure, or that they are not using it because of the safety reasons. Again, for the secondary trips in tier B also, like it's 3 times, but somewhat lesser, only roughly more than half of the percent. Half of the respondents are traveling 3 times a week. And yeah, somewhat similar. Yes, this is in comparison of the modal share on different distance spins. What you see here is the public transport in the light blue, and the oranges, which is PT and car respectively. But here, what you see is more yellow in tier B, which is the MTWs, and the orangish, that is the car. Now, during lockdown, so two-thirds of the persons, they were just doing work from home. So it's like the exclusion were only for the mad people for essential services. And this work from home was somewhat lower in tier B. And yeah, it's walk is emerged as most preferred. In India, this is also reported in some other studies, but in let's say Europe, the bicycle was emerged as the most preferred mode of travel. Yes, in some cities, the share of the bicycle in India also was kind of higher during these periods and post that period. Naturally, still have many of us still have the stress, anxiety, fear, and about 44% of the person working remotely, they were already in their hometown. And this is just because, as I explained in the earlier figure, that due to the ongoing trends across the globe, people started moving much earlier than the start of the lockdown. So that's how like half of the persons were already in their hometowns. Yeah, and so basically here this kind the grocery like this peak, which I was also trying to explain earlier. This is basically half of the persons in tier A and tier B cities reported that they have already stocked their need for a month, and that's basically nothing more than that's called like panic buying. So this was like supply were limited, but the demand was pretty high. Then also like the walk was coming out to be a more resilient active mode of transport, which is probably where towards end of the slides I will talk about it, like where we need to focus more. Yeah, some other results, but just I would say reduction in public transport, that was the major thrust which we were able to come out of all of that. Like for all income levels, we were for all distance groups, we were able to see that the public transport share would go down, and that's what was like they were moving to car and motorcycle. These shares were going down. In tier A cities, we also observed that the share of intermediate public transport system like auto rickshaws or battery vehicles, they were also rising. So basically, that means the people would like to go from much crowded vehicles to the less crowded vehicle, or maybe they will be able to only travel two at a time or three at a time. Again, some more results, but mostly about the PT ridership. So this is now a few interesting thing is that is basically the car share, which is rising, which was supposed to rise post COVID, which we also observed. I will show you some more screenshots from the news article, the real world, which was the case. So this is like coming from public transport as well as the two-wheelers and the decrease in the public transport. Okay, and then you can see the many people who were using public transport, those were the predominantly they were the most uncertain, because this was kind of the case, like if you're traveling in a public transport, it's more likely that you may get the infection. So you see those were the uncertain people over there. Similarly over here, uncertainty is, this is in tier B now. Should for some reason this my WebEx is still, yeah, okay, now it's better. So again, the car share was expected to increase, and again, some significant motorbike were shifting to car, as well as from public transport, we were able to see motorcycles. So it's basically the people who can afford car, they were moving to car, and then for public transport, they were moving to motorcycle. Yeah, this is what I was saying. So like the situation in Delhi, which is like August 2020, and this is towards a border. So it's like people were started to coming back, and then this is like a huge increase in the uses of the private motorized transport. This is like about 1/3 of the people said they would start traveling in tier B, and then 1/3 were kind of uncertain what they would do. Again, some more data on the public transport, mode share, etc. But here in the tier B, the major sufferer were the IPT modes, intermediate public transport modes, because in many of those cities, like about almost 100 cities, they do not have a proper public transport system. The many trips they were solved by only the intermediate public transport system. So now, like there were norms. Like also recently, there were an announcement so that to reduce the number of passengers traveling in metro by 50%, and we have seen what has happened. So that was the case. Like, are we prepared for these kind of pandemic situations when we impose such rules, or how do we bring back the passengers traveling in the public transport, because those were the sufferers, and it's also more important because the public transport are generally not in profit, and they are heavily subsidized. So that's why we ask, like, are you willing to pay more to make your travel safer? So it's like approximately 50% are willing to pay extra. So half of the people are said like we are happy to pay extra. Okay, and this number, and it may go as high as 25%. So naturally, we see that there is a potential need of a better, safer, and resilient public transport system. So that's where we thought like these kind of autonomous pods, which would have a capacity of 2 to 4 passengers in each vehicle, but will have a very low headway, and then can serve the need of the people even during such pandemic times. And then we thought of adding it because in many cities across India, these kind of systems are being considered not just for the first mile, last mile, but also the primary mode of the public transport system. So that's why we thought, let us try to understand what is happening. So this is what we see, like depending on the red is showing the payment during emergency situation. So the people who were in this range, or they are just saying they are ready to pay 25 to 50% or 50 to 70% more. Yeah, just some insights which kind of I have explained, but important thing here was the staggering and the number of people who would may continue for work from home. So these kind of details which has come out of the survey, we thought of using that for the simulation experiment. So in here, we tried to use a MATSIM, multi-agent transport simulation framework. The reason being, we already had this scenario from previous studies. So we continued using that. And this is basically just a MATSIM cycle. It's a co-evolutionary algorithm, which basically attempts to execute the plans of the travelers simultaneously, so that the agents try to maximize their utility. So we recalibrated the scenario for 18% work or study from home scenario for tier B. And then we considered a couple of policy scenarios. For instance, let us say what would happen if we have alternate work days, what would happen if we split the education in 2 shifts, and what would happen if we discount the public transport system, how the ridership would change. Now, this whole scenario was used because we already had integrated bicycle superhighway in that system. The superhighway term is used that it's different than the bicycle tracks, which is kind of continuous, smooth, and uninterrupted, so that the riders would feel much safer. It's not necessarily to be elevated; it could be at ground. Another reason for having this scenario was like we were able to see at least one third of the primary trips and more than like 40% of the trips in tier B, they were shorter than 5 kilometers. So if we just account for about 10 kilometers, that would be at least half of the trips. And then they are the potential trips which can switch to walk or bicycles. So, and in our previous scenario, we were able to see a significant rise in the bicycle trip if we have anything similar infrastructure. So this is results of alternate work days. We see a significant drop on most of the arterials and subarterials, how the traffic volume would drop. That's expected as well. On top of that, we can think of let's say, carpooling if some people are traveling alone. But that's more like a strategy for the different purpose here. We explored it only for let's say, how do we reduce the gathering in a workplace or an education shift or any other place, because that was the emphasis. We cannot just increase the infrastructure overnight so that we can maintain the social distancing. So that was the, let's say, for workplaces, we just say alternate work days. Then for education, we thought, because right now we are mostly on online media, but the practical field work, that's like without that knowledge, it's much more difficult, especially for the kids who can go to the schools in the neighborhood, like in or IITs. The students are all over India, so that's even a bit more difficult. Naturally, for the bigger class sizes with the limited infrastructure, it cannot be maintained. So we thought of having it in the 2 shifts. It could also be a weekly basis. It could be like the shifts can be shuffled on a weekly basis or kept same. It's just like was one of the idea. Naturally, with the 2 shifts, we saw minor increase in motorized two-wheeler trips and bicycle trips, but the total delay total delay observed by these trips were reduced by 22% and then 5% respectively, for motorbikes and then bicycle and then car, and minor increase in motorbike. That's really very high, because this would further improve the system welfare. Now, this is in the public transport, we have a problem like how often we sanitize it, and if we try to maintain the social distancing, etc., that would again increase the dwell time, which would increase the cycle time, and then reduce the supply. So like that's why, like, one of the thing was like, how do we actually along with these lines, we also published one of the work with Professor Bolia himself and Dr. Suman, and there we try to explore some other strategies that how do we offset the demand by maintaining the different levels of physical distancing. So here we were able to see what would happen if we do use the different discounting factors along the peak hours, like plus minus on the morning peak hour or evening peak hour, or plus minus 2, and then we can see continuous increase. The car trips were lower, but they were maintained. So it's mostly like the motorcycle trips, they were converting to the public transport trips, or some of the bicycle trips, they were going to the public transport trips. So yes, just I think I have already taken enough time. These are just the results from as I try to explain. I will maybe go to this opportunities which we see here. Is like in one of the recent study which documented this kind of particular diagram, where it's trying to show the affordability on the x-axis, lower to left and higher to right, versus the pandemic safety. Naturally, the walk would be, because it's most affordable. You don't have to pay. It's just the physical efforts, and it's also the safer. But it's safer provided it's have enough infrastructure. It's not just like crowded, but also the bicycle walk. These are still being considered, and then bicycle trips, increase in the bicycle trips and then walk trips were observed in not just this study but many other studies. So this is probably the time to put efforts or to focus on our infrastructure policies towards the NMT, non-motorized transport. Here was also which you see single occupant vehicle, which is kind of least affordable in these categories, but it's safer. But if we move towards, let's say, PRT system, then this could come up somewhere here. It's becomes somewhat more affordable, but still maybe somewhat lesser safe. This is another part, like sometimes we look like where do we place the bicycle superhighway. So we also try to, we did an exercise. We tried to look on the open source data, which is available, and then try to put the speeds on the road network of Bangalore or at different time of the day. And then the red line is showing the higher, higher congestion or lesser speed, like 10 kph. Orange is showing 15, and then yellow is 20, and then green is more than 20. So basically it looks like at around 10:30 in the morning, it's like many streets which are already facing the speed less than 15 kph or so. So those can be definitely converted to these kind of NMT based infrastructure. So this could be one possible way, or to start with. It's not all. We are further expanding it to find the consecutive bicycle tracks, but this could be one possible way where we can try to exploit the available data sources. And then naturally we need to have the public transport system which is applicable in normal as well as the such kind of pandemic or emergency situation. Finally, it's probably, I think Singapore has already started doing their development along these lines, but we may have to think, because travel is a derived need. You need to work, that's why you travel. We have seen that the average trip length has increased from roughly, let's say, 6 kilometers 30 years back to about 20 kilometers in Delhi. So this is basically, we are continuing, the average trip length is continuously increasing. Probably we change the land use pattern or this infrastructure development so that we reduce the need of travel at all, and then we may have this kind of the different hierarchy where everything is available within the walkable limits. Like you might have seen some of the recent campaigns in across Europe, where they are going more like a 15-minute city or 30-minute city. Okay, I will stop here. I think I have taken more time, and again, apologies for the inconvenience. So, Ms. Mansi, if there are any questions, I would be happy to hear. Most of the slides were prepared by student Mr. Anurag, so thanks to him. Yes.
So we'll open the floor for question answers. If anybody has a question, you can please unmute yourself, say your name, and proceed to ask your question.
Okay, I think then we can end the session.
So once again, thank you for the interesting presentation.
Hello, Amit.
Yeah.
Hello, Mansi. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. Just one question from Amit, actually.
Yes, please.
Amit, what do you suggest actually, that what will be the best method during pandemic and after that?
Best method for travel.
Obviously, transportation and how to optimize the usage of vehicles, and what do you suggest?
See, I think this is a very good question, but it's more difficult to answer because there is no one.
From your analysis, what did you finally propose?
Yeah, so what we proposed is basically the alternate work shifts. So that would basically reduce the load on the public transport system, as well as the social distancing can be maintained at the workplaces. And then next was the education and in two shifts. But some of the things which we were able to get from our study, we were able to see that we were like what happening later on. But things are changing now. For instance, the people are vaccinated.
Right.
That means that they are ready to take the chances of infection. They are more confident on traveling. So, for instance, even the positivity rate in this wave, I think for Delhi it's fifth wave, which has basically positivity rate. I think it's crossed 15-20%, and still the public transport system is running at its full capacity. So it's basically people are not so much scared anymore. Yes, they might be stressed, but still the vaccination has changed many things. So, but still, I think these kind of things, wherever it's possible, especially in IT industries, they have started now coming up with a completely new plan. For instance, they are relocating their workplaces. It's not just at one centralized places, but in different suburbs, different areas where people can work there if they are not happy to work at home. And then they have started also bringing a long-term work from home plans. So similarly, probably in other offices, this is not a common practice. This can be achieved. It's not just good for pandemic times, but also good for, let's say, other times where we don't really need those many vehicles on the streets.
Right, right. Thank you. It was a different topic, so I thought I will definitely listen to you today. I happen to be alumni of IIT Roorkee.
Okay, and I'm alumni of
I'm
IIT
at
Delhi.
I'm at NIT Hamirpur. Thank you. Thank you
Thank you,
so
ma'am.
much. It was pleasure hearing you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right. So we close the session. Thank you so much, Professor Agarwal, once again. Thank you,
My
everybody, for attending.